you. Thank you so much. Thank you for having us. I was talking to Monica, we've had this on the calendar for so long. I go, oh my gosh, it's here, finally. And what a beautiful facility. I live in Ridgefield. I've been at RVNAHealth for a few years, but I've never been to the Mark Twain Library. So thank you so much for having me. We have done this presentation over and over. It always draws a good crowd. The feedback I get is, oh my gosh, there's a lot of information. But you just need to know that it's out there, and you need to know where to go to get the next step and handle it. But I want you to just take away that there are things you can do to target your osteoporosis, and don't be scared of it. We are RVNAHealth, as Maggie said, which the R was for Ridgefield, but we are so much more than Ridgefield. Our bread and butter is home health, but we have hospice and palliative care, we have private duty nursing, and I'm the director of our outpatient facility. So people come to me for physical therapy, or us for occupational speech therapy. I see people with osteoporosis all the time. I have a video of a patient on our slideshow today, and we use exercise prescription to target the bone disease, but then also the nuances of you, what you like to do, and how you exercise, and meet you where you are. So that's what RVNAHealth is. And again, I am KateCampbell. I've been practicing physical therapy since 2006 and have found my way through the sports world, the geriatric world, and that's where I had to learn about. I now run a Parkinson's Center through RVNAHealth because there's a lot of that out there, but there's a lot of people that are scared of osteoporosis. And I say, I'm not scared. No, I would love to exercise with you. Let's go. So we have lots of great results, so I tend to see those patients as well. And Monica has been treating dietitian for many years, again, starting in the sports world, but this is the population out there. Everybody needs us. So she has a food-first approach, and I can attest many patients love her. I've worked with her as well. And again, here's what's best, here's the medicine you should take, but you gotta actually swallow the pill. You gotta actually do the work, and that's where you get the benefit, and she does some magic there. So we'll talk about what is osteoporosis and osteopenia, kind of the science, what's the conversation you need to have with your physician. Monica's gonna talk about nutrition, and then I'm gonna talk about the exercise prescription. So what is osteoporosis? It is a bone deficiency. It is systemic, meaning it goes through your entire body, characterized by low bone mass and the microarchitectural deterioration of bone tissue with the increase in bone fragility, and it is susceptible to fracture. We measure it and know that it exists based on a DEXA scan, and the T-score must be less than negative 2.5. Osteoporosis is negative 1 to negative 2.5. So who is here? And I'm so sorry that the Zoom population can't raise their hand as quickly, but I want to know, so who right here has osteoporosis? Okay, only a couple. Who's got osteopenia? All right, we're in the middle. Who wants to prevent any of these? Awesome, okay, very good. Who thinks that osteopenia will turn into osteoporosis? Sure. Who thinks that? Who thinks osteopenia will turn into osteoporosis? How about may turn into osteoporosis? Will not turn into osteoporosis? All could be true. So that's what I want to change some of your thoughts behind this. Okay. Now I can run it again. In my presenter view. Yes, nice, thank you. Okay, osteoporosis is genetic only. There's no way I could have prevented it. True or false? False, totally. There's a part of it. It could be, you could be predisposed, but there are things that we can do. And I love that you're all here, and this is the hard part, fixing it now, preventing it from turning to osteopenia, but really who should be here are the kids, right? I need you to call your daughters and call your granddaughters and be like, get jumping. Start doing jump rope. Eat healthy now. Yes, please drink your milk. If you don't like milk, let's find something else. We want to build our bones up when it's prime time to do so. And we'll talk about that slope of bone density later. You cannot reverse osteoporosis, true or false? False. You can reverse osteoporosis to osteopenia. You can reverse osteopenia to normal bone tissue. It is possible. It is a lot of work and it takes a lot of elements to make that happen. So this is what the bone tissue looks like. Usually it's nice and dense, there's smaller holes, and osteoporotic, you can see how easily that could break, right, when we look under the microscope. And why do we care about osteoporosis? Why do we as practitioners need to address this almost epidemic? It's because there's 10 million people in the US with osteoporosis. 8 million are women, 2 million are men. Anyone know why more women? What's like the magic word is estrogen? Yeah, oh, estrogen's good. Estrogen helps our bones, and when menopause happens and we have the change in hormones, change in estrogen, the bones start to suffer. So we have those with osteoporosis, 50% of females will have a fracture, 25% of men in your lifetime. And 20% of people die following a hip fracture. It's mostly because they were in bad shape before. It could be that the fracture actually did something medically dangerous, like nick an artery. It could be the effects of surgery, if you need surgery. But then even after a hip fracture, 50% of them survive the hip fracture, regain their previous level of function. It's a big deal. They've done so much to try to prevent hip fractures. They've come up with almost airbags that you wear like a belt, so that when you fall and it senses, it blows up. Yeah, it didn't work. Because it's so serious. They're trying everything. And what we can do right now is just keep your bones as dense as possible, and maybe even learn how to fall the right way to avoid those. Sorry for the shameless plug for our talk in a couple months, how to fall safely. Oh, it's so much fun. I think it's a built in. Osteoporosis costs money. Medicare cares a lot about money, not about you, but about money. $25 billion for the cost of dealing with osteoporotic fractures by 2025. Most of the fractures happen in the forearm, wrist, 75% in shoulder, and they happen mostly in women. Sorry, 80% forearm, 75% humerus, 70% hip, and 58% spine. And 61% of the osteoporosis fractures occur in women. And if you had a fracture, you have 86% more likelihood of another fracture. Oh, we got to fix that, because it sounds way scarier than it should be. So let's go back in time to when the bone was healthy and everybody was doing its job. This is what's going on at all times in our body. We have these little guys called osteoclasts, and they are in charge of cleaning up little things that constantly happen to our bones. It's not a fracture, it's not a stress fracture, it's just a stress reaction from our daily life. You picked up a little too heavy of the groceries, and now there's a little bone reaction, and they're gonna just clean it up. Okay, and then it's gonna put down some new bone, and then it's gonna solidify the bone with those osteoblasts, and the cycle repeats. This is a nice, healthy environment. Osteoporosis happens when the osteoclasts are working too hard and breaking down the bone, and our osteoblasts aren't working hard enough to put in some more bone. That's just what's going on in the bone, but all of those osteoblasts and clasts, they do their job based on hormones. And there's some big hormones at play. Estrogen was one of them, but another one is at the thyroid. So a lot of thyroid issues. And this is how sometimes men get osteoporosis, is because there's a thyroid issue or there's a prostate issue and side effects of medicine, yada, yada. So in a happy environment, there's just enough calcium in the blood and in the bone and in the intestines and in the urine, and everybody's happy. But let's say it just got a little too high. Then our thyroid says, oh, there's too much in the blood. That's not good. So let's put it in the bone, and let's make sure that the urine is taking what it needs, and then the calcium levels in the blood fall, and everybody's happy again. But maybe it fell too much, and it's too low. So then the parathyroid releases parathyroid hormone, which says, okay, I need calcium right away. Calcium is also important even for just our electrical circuiting, our heart muscle needs, and how our nerves, everything needs a little bit of calcium. It's not just about building bone. So it's saying, I need to survive. The bones are secondary, sorry. Takes it out of our bones and puts it somewhere else, and then it comes back to normal. Osteoporosis is when we're constantly in the little too low category. So instead of putting it into our bones, it's taking it from our bones. You don't have to memorize that. Just appreciate that it's really complicated. It's not just about take calcium and put it in. We have to make an environment to put it in. And so first there has to be enough calcium in our system, and mostly it's from our diet. Taking it in the right amounts, the right time, and Monica's going to go through that. But then you also need vitamin D, which carries the calcium to the bone. You could have the right calcium and no vitamin D, doesn't work. You don't have that transporter. And then you have to have the right levels of estrogen, and we know as that drops, we're not getting the bone growth, because that's what estrogen does, is it promotes bone growth. And maybe you don't have the right stress, maybe a sedentary behavior. You are working 8 hours a day sitting at a desk, and then you have a commute an hour home and an hour away, or you love to read, and that's great for your brain, but not for your bones. We need to make sure that we have the right amount of stress, not mental stress, physical stress. So like I said, the best thing I can do is say, call up your daughters, call up your granddaughters, say, get moving, get exercising, start eating healthy now. Because you want this curve to be as high as possible, as early as possible, because it's inevitable. It's going to come down. That's okay. That's normal. Osteoporosis is when the slope is even sharper, right? So in a normal female, when it hits menopause, the rate is a little bit steeper. Again, this is not osteoporosis, this is normal. So if you could start way up here, then you have less to fall, right? It's when you didn't get too high, and then that normal slope, now you're too low. Or something happens here, cancer, and you had to do chemo. You have to. That's not so good for your bones. Something else happens, reproductive-wise, estrogen changes, the rate can change. There's some things we can't modify. But it's just to think about, this is normal, these T-scores will go down, it's how much they go down. All right, take a little break. The science is tough. How am I doing so far? Any questions? You getting it? Okay. So now we want to talk to the doctor about it. And I got to tell you, I have patients that are saying, my doctor didn't worry about it. Oh, you got osteoporosis. Okay, please. You know, instead of like, let's do something. Let's talk about it. Are you exercising? Maybe you need an endocrinologist. There's some questions there that you can advocate for yourself. And then we'll talk about nutrition and exercise. So, talk to the doc, 3 things. And by the way, you're more than welcome. I didn't know this was going to be recorded. You're more than welcome to take notes or screenshots of my slides. There's nothing copyrighted. We just want to share information. Get tested. Check out your risk factors, and don't be scared. So getting tested means ask the doctor, can we get more information? Your CMP, your complete metabolic panel, asking to can you check my phosphorus. There is a correlation between the phosphorus and the calcium. Monica will talk about that. Getting your thyroid hormone checked and parathyroid hormone, your vitamin D level, And it's really important to try to get a 24-hour urine calcium collection. Not just hi, you're here for your annual physical, pee in the cup, okay, go. 24 hours. It's not fun. Maybe it's only peeing in the cup. But what it's doing is seeing, is your body getting rid of calcium? Then let's figure out, how do we keep it? What hormone is going on that's letting it leave your body when you really need that? Does that make sense? Like, okay, you're supplementing with calcium, why is it not staying? So those are things that are good to talk about. Of course, the DEXA scan. This is what it looks like on our end. You probably only see the little lab reports where you just get the overall T-score. And it's a negative 2.5. It sounds so scary. But I always ask patients, can I read it on your portal? Can you bring me a lab result? I want to see. Because what may not be scary is if you're only a negative 2.6 at your wrist. You're actually negative 1 in your back. And you've been afraid to bend over. I literally had this woman who was like, I'm not going to pick up that pen. I'm not allowed to bend over to break myself. You just sat down. I mean, you're doing it. I don't know, how'd you put your socks on today, right? So just to decrease some of that fear. So the areas that they like to check are the lumbar spine, down here, 2 places in the hip. This is not your hips, this is your pelvis. The hip is that ball in the socket. So here's the ball in the socket. The vulnerable spots are the greater middle fan and then the neck of the femur. They look at the wrist and sometimes even in the shoulder. And because those are the weakest spots, those are the fractures we really care about. So sometimes it's different right to left, sometimes it's different in the body parts. But I've always found it helps decrease some of the fear. Maybe it will guide us to what are the worst areas. Let's make sure we load that part of the body better. It may also say, wow, really weak area, I am being protected. And we'll start to go from there. I had a patient that said, make sure they know the DEXA scan is not scary, it's very easy, you lie down, it's comfortable. And here are some of those north values. Again, I want to make sure you know too that there are some kind of sketchy scams out there that are like, free, come out for a Sunday at the park or at the rec center and get a free bone density screening. No, I have not researched the validity of those or what they test. Great, but there's also some discrepancy between machines. So if you went to a different office, your result might be different because the calculation is calibrated and the technician. So if possible, for best results, try to always go to the same machine in the same place. Yep. Yes, just want to be wary of any of those other portable machines. Risk factors. Some things you can change. Let's change them, and some things you can't. So give yourself some grace. You can't change your age, your history, your low body weight, not necessarily now, but in your peak bone loading years. If you're really slender as you're growing up, you and gravity got along so well. It didn't act on you. But when you're heavier, gravity, you have to fight more. You have to have stronger bones to withstand gravity. So those with a higher body weight, especially younger, are way less likely to have look around. Right? Because you're all in good shape. If you didn't have a good diet early on, you can't change it. It's over. If you didn't have a lot of exercise in those early years, pubescent years, endocrine disorders, hyper or hypothyroidism, Cushing's disease, diabetes, vitamin D deficiency, rheumatologic disorders like RA, ankylosing spondylitis, anything that puts you in a pro-inflammatory state. It's at risk and can't do anything about that. GI disorders like celiac or malabsorption or IBS, summary bowel, and testosterone deficiency in men. And estrogen deficiency. Okay. modifiable. These are the things you can change. If you are sedentary, get up and move. If your diet isn't so good right now, let's change it. If you're using some of these medications, they could increase the risk and some lower bone mineral density, like antacids and some Malox, Mylanta. I usually read them. They're all there. Take a picture, feel like, oh, yeah, that's on my list. And so you have to do the pros and cons. Ooh, I really like that because that's keeping me alive. Side effects. This is a risk for low bone density, right? Or say, oh, hey doc, is there something else I could do and try to change it? It's just worth having a conversation with that one. And of course, alcohol and tobacco use, not so good for the bone. So just want to make sure you know, don't be scared. I think just having this information, knowing that there are things you can control, and it's not a death sentence, this is just one more thing on your list. This doesn't define you. Okay. Oh, of course. So, like I said, I have people that are afraid to move, but it's the ones who are moving that do better. The ones that I see do nothing, they bend over once and fracture, or they're just sitting there and they move and they fracture. They're in the assisted living facilities and sit in their wheelchair and sit in a recliner all day long. So you can imagine my spine. All of these levels are stacked up against each other. And it feels like when I go backwards that it's like crushing them, right? No, they kind of move in this form. It's actually when it's forward that, can you imagine an architectural art where the blocks go up and then they have to start to wedge to make, and there's that keystone, right? When that happens, the wedging is the crash. It's a bad posture for a long time. It's the avoiding moving that is where we get the start compression fractures. So to be afraid of bending over once, well, okay, bend over here. We're taking force off, taking it, putting it on, and taking it back off. So I don't want you to be scared of not moving. In fact, I'd rather you live your life. The research shows those who are moving do better. And exercise, I'll get into that. That's the thing to talk about is that it's not actually dangerous. But you have to know where to start and have a good coach to get through it. Avoid falling, as if that's a thing. If you do fall, try to fall the right way. Like I said, we have a learn to fall class, and don't start on exercise. Anything there? Do you have some ammo to talk to the doctor about? Question? Okay. I'm going to try, Monica, you are up. I'm going to try one more time to get our presenter view. What's going on? You have a PowerPoint or? This is a clicker that moves it.
You know what? It almost is, it's opposite now. It thinks that this is the computer and this is the primary
Do
monitor.
it the other way. Or because then you guys are like, oh, she's not smart.
So I think you're going to figure out all our tricks.
All my notes are on here. Let's just do play from current slide.
All right.
You're happy.
That's fine. That's fine. That's fine.
I'll do the clicks anytime you.
Well, I don't think I'll need anything major. But if you want to leave it here, just. Awesome. Okay. Hi, everybody. Sorry about that. Are we good with Zoom back over there?
We're good.
My name is Monica. I am the registered dietitian. I had a lovely introduction, but I was hiding in the back, so here I am. No, I don't mind. I'm good. I like a little control. So yes, we are going to be talking about nutrition today. I would just love to know, like, show of hands, how many folks here and perhaps on Zoom, even though I can't see, are familiar with what you can do from a nutritional perspective for your bone health? Okay, put your hand down if you know anything beyond calcium. Kind of. Okay, all right, awesome. Calcium, obviously, as Kate mentioned earlier, does play quite a significant role in the physiology or sort of the makeup of osteoporosis and osteopenia, but it's not the only thing. And for that exact reason is sort of why I created this. Could I point with this? No, maybe not.
There's a laser.
Where's the laser?
See the red flash?
Oh, awesome. Is why I created this sort of bone health or osteopenia, osteoporosis hierarchy. And really what I wanted to highlight was that there was so many different things that we want to look to do to optimize our diet to minimize the risk of osteopenia and osteoporosis. Now, the cool thing about nutrition as it relates to your bones is in some ways it's pretty simple. In other words, this sort of diet or bone healthy diet is applicable to young kids. It's applicable to you folks all here and you folks with not with perfectly fine bone health, or those maybe who it's unknown, and those with osteopenia and osteoporosis. So it is one of those things where it's only going to benefit you if you act now, right? You don't need to wait to have the disease or the condition before you can start making these or start implementing these recommendations. So the very first piece is an anti-inflammatory diet, okay? I actually am going to go into depth on each one of these, what they mean and what to do about it as the slides continue. But as you sort of work your way up, you'll find that things get a little bit more specific. And really, we just want to start with the foundation, which is an anti-inflammatory diet, optimize our protein intake. Of course, we do want to consider calcium, and we will chat about that. Other specific nutrients include vitamin D, vitamin K2, selenium, and then prunes have a very specific role in bone health, which we will talk about as well. So the very first piece is the anti-inflammatory diet. Now, there's many different words for this. You maybe call it the Mediterranean diet, DASH diet, and key word on diet here, I don't mean diet in the way of like Weight Watchers or like Whole30. I mean diet just to mean like eating habits, okay? So the really cool thing about this is you just need to do this most of the time to have this positive impact on your bone health. You don't need to be perfect or 100%. It's not an all or nothing mindset like those traditional diets when we think about weight or weight management. Now, the very basis of this diet is founded on unprocessed, plant-rich, whole foods. I also love explaining it this way because you can really apply it to so many different lifestyles and cultures and general food practices. So it's not nearly as limiting as, right, many of those diets out there. The very foundation is unprocessed, plant-rich, whole foods. So of course, that highlights fruits, vegetables, whole grains, healthy fats, protein, which again we'll talk about, vitamins and minerals, which are primarily found in your fruits and vegetables, and then adequate hydration. Now you might be asking, right, well, what's the research to support this? Like, where did Monica get this? So not only is this the sort of most, not sort of, but the most recommended diet for cardiovascular health, for mental health, for cancer, but there was specific studies looking at fruit and vegetable intake and how it affected risk of fractures. And they found that in folks with or without osteopenia, osteoporosis, that folks who had lower fruit and vegetable consumption had higher risk of fractures. And this is probably due to what's called polyphenols. Show of hands, and on Zoom, maybe think in the back, who's heard of polyphenols? A few people. Okay, so essentially, polyphenols are plant compounds that have an additional benefit to our health beyond just providing like a certain vitamin or mineral, okay? So they're not necessarily required, right? Like we can live without them, but we shouldn't live without them. They, again, provide this additional benefit. Namely, the most probably familiar polyphenol we are with is antioxidants, right? That's a very common buzzword, right? That's a type of polyphenol. Now, yes, polyphenols are very concentrated in fruits and vegetables, but guess what? They're also found in various types of whole grains, beans, legumes, anything that is unprocessed whole food. You can almost guarantee that you are going to find it's going to be very high in polyphenols. So essentially, in other words, anti-inflammatory could almost be replaced with polyphenol rich, right? And now specific foods that I do recommend include raspberries, whole grains such as quinoa, farro, and actually let me circle back to the raspberries. That could be any berry family. Raspberries, blueberries, blackberries, strawberries. I love raspberries because they have a great fiber content, but they are incredibly rich in polyphenols known as resveratrol, which is also cardioprotective, okay? So I usually recommend on the anti-inflammatory diet about 1 serving of raspberries per day, about 2 servings of whole grains per day. Again, my favorite is quinoa and farro, but it doesn't matter. It could be whatever you enjoy. Other types are bulgur, millet. Let's see, what else am I thinking of? Barley. What were you going to say?
Barley.
Barley. Oh, thank you. Yeah, barley. I'm sure I'm missing some. But right, these are truly unprocessed. Notice how I didn't jump right in whole grain bread. Not saying that whole grain bread is bad, but what I am saying is that that is a more processed food. It's minimally processed, but it is still processed. Any bread bakers in the room? Okay, raise it high. I got into bread baking this year. I love it. It's amazing. Just as much as it is good for our health, it's totally good for the mental aspect as well. But that's totally different, right? That's really not processed. It's just a whole wheat flour, yeast, warm water, bake. So that's a completely different situation than, you know, traditional bread from our groceries. Legumes. I usually recommend about 4 servings of beans per week. Doesn't matter the type. Please feel free to get canned. Just make sure that you're rinsing them upon use to monitor the sodium. But beans are an excellent source of protein and again, polyphenols. Healthy fats include things like extra virgin olive oil and avocados. As part of an anti-inflammatory diet, I recommend about 2 to 3 tablespoons of raw extra virgin olive oil per day. The reason I'm emphasizing raw is because when you start to cook the extra virgin olive oil, you actually degrade its most powerful polyphenol antioxidant called oleocanthal. Okay, so we want to keep that antioxidant fully intact. Other sources of healthy fats, as I mentioned, include avocados, and then certainly your salmon, right, which is also a great source of protein. Now, on the anti-inflammatory diet, another source of protein that I really like to encourage is dairy. Now, this may be shocking for some people because I feel like dairy has a bad rep in the media, you know, in social media in general as being pro-inflammatory. And there's not a whole lot of evidence to support such a big statement like that. Surely, dairy has been shown to be somewhat inflammatory on certain diseases in certain studies in certain people. It's never something that I would say, oh, that's pro-inflammatory, don't consume, to, you know, a population, to a general population, moreover a population where we're here thinking about our bone health, okay? So we'll talk a little bit more about dairy, and what you guys will find is that, you know, there's more, or excuse me, foods do more than one thing. They have more than one nutrient. So going back to this, right? Salmon is an excellent source of protein, so it's going to help with our moderate protein intake, but it's also very anti-inflammatory. Oh, and it has vitamin D, right? And so we really want to look for and increase the amount of foods that have one or more of these things included, okay? So now, you know, sort of moving up the pyramid, want to highlight protein and osteoporosis. So there's a lot of, again, to this idea, a lot of misinformation about high protein, low protein. And I'm telling you, when we first did this PowerPoint, I studied extensively what is the best protein for folks regarding their bone health, osteopenia, osteoporosis. to what might be considered a rather underwhelming answer. Moderate protein intake is best, okay? So we don't want too much, we also don't want too little. And now the thing with moderate protein, right, I can't sit here and give you an amount necessarily because everyone's protein needs are going to look different. On average, a moderate protein intake is going to be about 70 to 85 grams of protein per day. That's on average, okay? Now, really, the almost more important than the total amount is how are you consuming this protein? So our body can best absorb this protein when it's spread out throughout the day. So long are the days when we're just having like our 8 ounces of salmon or 8 ounces of chicken at dinner, right? We really want to think about how can I get a protein serving in every single meal and every single snack. And now this isn't a recommendation. I mean, yes, it is for your bones, but it's also a great tip for weight management as well. So consuming protein with every meal and every snack will also help either keep you weight stable or could help with weight loss goals if that is your goal as well. So I best protein sources for people with bone health considerations. And I want to just go through them again because, again, you're going to find this overlap, okay? So starting with tuna, salmon, and sardines, excellent sources of complete proteins. Because they are animal-based protein, it means that they're a complete protein and they have all the amino acids, all the building blocks that your body needs, okay? Additionally, they're about on average for 3 ounces, about 30 grams. So if we go back to that idea of, what did I say, 70 to 85, 60 to 85, right? On average, that's your total need. Well, if we do about 3 ounces of tuna, salmon, and sardines, we are getting, about 1/3, a little over, but about 1/3 of our daily needs. So that's a good way to think about it. Now, with sardines in particular, sardines not only are an excellent source of complete protein, but they also have calcium in them, okay? So that's a really cool, thing that is unique to sardines. And salmon, tuna, and sardines also have the healthy fats, right? So they're also supporting us in an anti-inflammatory diet as well as our protein intake. Tempeh and tofu are excellent sources of protein as well. They're more plant-based sources. And then, of course, we've got our dairy, so yogurt and milk. And again, these are doing multiple things and that they are part of an anti-inflammatory diet. They're supporting your protein needs. They have adequate amounts of calcium and vitamin D, right? So it's not like we need to eat all this food to get the nutrients in. We just need to be mindful about the best foods. Now, particular brands that I like, yogurt, I highly, highly recommend that we do like a Greek yogurt. I like the brand Faye, Chobani, Siggy's. Plain Greek yogurt, about 5 ounces, is going to be around 20 grams of protein. So again, that's a little under 1/3 of the total protein that we're aiming for. For milk, I really like the brand Fairlife. I will say it's a little bit more expensive and not necessary, but it does have about 5 more grams of protein per serving, and that can really be significant when your average glass of milk, I don't know if you can see, is 8 grams of protein. When you do Fairlife milk, 1 cup is 13 grams of protein. So maybe you pair that with a whole grain like oats, and now 13 plus about 5 grams from the oats is, my math, 18 grams. So, right, it can really change the composition of a meal. And of course, again, protein, calcium, and vitamin D, and again, part of an anti-inflammatory diet. So those are some of my highest recommended protein foods. Gonna go. All right, let's talk about calcium. So this is probably most anticipated, very, very important from that sort of physiological perspective of bone health. And Kate kind of touched upon some of this, so I'm not gonna, what I really want to highlight though is that protein is primarily stored in the bones. And as Kate mentioned earlier, I am going to repeat this because this is so important. First of all, when you get your calcium done on a comprehensive metabolic panel, okay, your CMP, that is not indicative of your dietary protein intake. I'm going to say that again. We all get basic blood work done when your doctor, you go for your physical or whatever, they're like, let's do some blood work. We all get our calcium done. For the most part, unless you have cancer, unless something's really going crazy, everyone's calcium is going to look normal because blood calcium does not reflect the calcium that we eat. Why? It is so tightly regulated. So tightly regulated that if our blood is lacking, it's going to pull from our bones, and that is why calcium becomes so important to maintain adequate bone health, because again, the bones are going to take the hit if the diet is low to keep the calcium up in the blood. Does that make sense? Awesome. So that's really the point that I wanted to highlight, and that as Kate even mentioned, you know, the best way to measure your dietary calcium, I say DEXA here, and that's true, but another way that you could do this as well is tracking. Like, do a few days of tracking and see if I'm as accurate as I can be. What am I actually putting in my mouth? How much calcium am I eating? And is it close to the recommended amount, which is 1,200 milligrams per day for women and about 1,400 for men, okay? So those are the numbers that we really want to look at. So, oh, yes. Okay, I will touch on that. Actually, it's just that in soy milk, I'll touch on it now. Soy milk, it's fortified, right? So it's added in, and cow's milk, it's naturally produced. In terms of the way that it affects our blood or absorption, it really doesn't. So it really doesn't matter. Get it how you can get it. Kate always says, people ask Kate, what's the best exercise? Kate says, the one that you'll do. Same, right? Sorry to blow that line if you were doing it. Same kind of concept here. What's the best calcium? Honestly, the one that you'll eat. That's realistic for you, right? Okay. It does. And I will go into that, but yeah, it does. So what do calcium and Goldilocks have in common? Okay, low calcium is bad, more calcium is not better. That 1,200 milligrams is just right, okay? And there's research to support this. We do not want to overconsume calcium. Every now and then I get a patient who can't figure out why they're losing bone, they're young, they're motivated, and they're 3,000 milligrams of calcium. Whether it's from dietary intake or supplements, we just don't want it. So ideally, what we do want to do is optimize calcium digestion and absorption. So calcium is best absorbed in smaller doses. So similar with the protein, you want to spread your intake out throughout the day. So here is how I like to think about it, right? I don't have an all or nothing mindset as it relates to supplementation or foods first. As a dietitian, I'm always going to say foods first for a few reasons, right? Dairy is part of an anti-inflammatory diet. There are other sources beyond dairy, don't get me wrong, and we will address those, but it's part of it. You know, there's protein in it, there's vitamin D, and your body is objectively going to better absorb it. High intake of calcium supplements has been related to kidney stones, has been related to cardiovascular events, right? So we know that we don't have these same things with dietary calcium. So what I like to say is, right, so the best sources are milk, yogurt, cottage cheese, kefir, and cheese. Other sources, tofu, molasses, sesame seeds, tahini, your greens, collard greens, spinach, fortified foods, such would be the soy milk or a soy yogurt, and then white beans. Now, I always say this fact and it surprises people. Believe it or not, different milks contain different amounts of calcium, different yogurts contain different amounts of calcium. So it is a little bit brand dependent. After all the research that I've done, I do like, again, Fairlife milk the best for milk. For yogurt, I tend to like the brand Noosa has a good amount of calcium, Noosa. Chobani drinkables have a good amount of calcium. Believe it or not, more calcium than the Chobani yogurts. And there are a few others. I want to say Cabot as well has a good amount of calcium in the yogurt as well. Cottage cheese, the brand Good Culture has a good amount of the calcium. And cheese, again, Cabot cheese is an excellent source of calcium. Yes.
The foods you mentioned for the vegetables and the salmon that have all those.
Yeah.
Are those nutrients diminished when you cook them?
No, not calcium. And not really any nutrient. Not to a degree that if you're doing it frequently enough, it's actually going to affect your health. Make sense? So we talk about what is a good source. I like to say around 300 to 400 milligrams per day. 300 to 400 milligrams per serving, 3 to 4 times per day, right? Because if we're thinking of 1,200 milligrams as being that like ideal number, we know calcium is best absorbed in smaller doses. So I say again, 300 to 400 milligrams, 3 to 4 times a day, depending on what you're doing. And here is just an example of how you can do this, right? So maybe breakfast is oatmeal with 1 glass of milk. And what I mentioned earlier on the previous slide about 1 serving of each specific brand, certainly for the dairy, is about 300 to 400 milligrams, okay? So like 1 glass of milk is about 300 to 400 milligrams. Make sure you get a Noosa yogurt. It's 330 milligrams with some fruit and chia seeds. Then maybe for a snack, you go ahead and take your 300, 400 milligram supplement. And then dinner, maybe you do like a whole grain pasta, a can of white beans, spinach, and then you top it with 1 ounce of Parmesan cheese. Okay, so that's just a perfect example of a type of eating that is anti-inflammatory, moderate protein intake, has calcium, vitamin D, so on and so forth, right? So if you do want to take a photo of this, I would encourage you to do so. Okay, vitamin D. So this one we can go quickly by because it's pretty simple. In the research, there really is no need to take vitamin D if your vitamin D levels are adequate, okay? So you're not going to get some additional benefit from taking vitamin D if your blood levels of vitamin D are already within normal limits. However, we live in New England. The weather's been terrible the past 3 months. Many of us here are actually low, or what they are now calling, I think, suboptimal or deficient in vitamin D. Super common. So get them checked. And any vitamin D supplement, you know, is recommended. Doctors give out different doses. The doses are not as important as that dietary calcium dose is. As I mentioned, 400 to 600 IUs per day is about that recommendation. But again, only going to be beneficial if your levels are low as it relates to bone health, okay? Now, this last one, there's a considerable amount of research on vitamin K. Actually, this is not the last one, but vitamin K. And we might be more familiar with vitamin K in our leafy greens. So vitamin K1 is very abundant in our leafy greens. Now, vitamin K2, which is a different type of vitamin K, and there's even different types of vitamin K2, has actually been shown to have some very specific roles on the bone. And they find that people in different countries where they have higher intakes of vitamin K2, specifically because of aged cheeses and natto, which is a fermented soybean found in Japan, have improved bone health, less osteopenia, less osteoporosis, less fractures. And they didn't just find this in observational trials, they've done a few randomized controlled trials on supplementation of vitamin K2, and they did find that folks with higher intakes of vitamin K2 did in fact have less risk of, I want to say less risk of fracture. So here are the recommended amounts. Now, this is kind of what I say. If you are not doing your best with an anti-inflammatory, you know, that sort of pyramid, don't think that you can just take a supplement and now your bones are going to be healthy, right? It really doesn't work like that. We really want to work our way up. And so if you do feel like you're doing all the things that I just mentioned, then maybe a vitamin K2 supplement, any of these doses would be appropriate. Or again, my favorite approach is natto. There's a brand called New York Natto. You can buy it. It's like $12 a jar. It'll last you a month. And 1 tablespoon a day of this food, which by the way, does contain, again, unlike a supplement, live and active probiotics. So it's for your gut. Soy in general is good for you, right? So these are things that a supplement could never do. Supplement, when you buy it, has one single use. But so New York NATO, 1 tablespoon per day is going to give you 180, actually a little over 180 micrograms of this type of vitamin K2, which is highly recommended to support bone health. So just 1 tablespoon a day. Traditionally, it's eaten with like eggs and a little bit of rice. Granted, that's not common in our culture, but throwing it on eggs, throwing it on a salad, throwing it on a bowl, very creative and different ways to eat it. Or if you're just like food is medicine, take it by the spoonful. I feel like that's my approach. That's also an option. So selenium is another important antioxidant for bone health. So ideally, we want to have around 55 micrograms per day, and there is 96 micrograms in just 1 Brazil nut. So another thing that I say is just add 1 Brazil nut to your diet per day. So yeah, you really start to form like, yeah, exactly. Thank you for that. Now, lastly, I always say like prunes at the end, it feels a little bit random. It kind of is, but there have been some really good quality data that particularly, here we go with this word again, polyphenol in prunes can help prevent bone loss. So what was studied was about 5 to 6 5 to 6 prunes per day has been shown to prevent osteoporosis from folks with osteopenia. So here is what my osteoporosis nutrition prescription would look like. So Mediterranean diet, anti-inflammatory diet at the core, protein with every single meal. You know, obviously you can play around with the supplementation versus the calcium from food. My recommendation is minimize the supplementation as best as possible. 1 supplement per day, 300 milligram servings of low-fat dairy, or, you know, play around with it, right? Maybe a little dairy, cottage cheese. Another thing I love here for the calcium is the kefir. Again, kefir has calcium, protein, and live and active probiotics, so it's good for your gut. 1 Brazil nut, 5 to 6 prunes, 1 tablespoon of NATO, and then a vitamin D supplementation as needed. So this is really how you can optimize that foods first approach. And then I will very quickly just dive into the osteoporosis nutrition and anti-nutrients. And I love this because I kind of surprise people. The only reason I included this was because I saw this all over the media, or like, you know, social media or websites or different gurus saying, don't do this and do this. The good news is, unless you are eating tons and tons of salt per day, unless you are on a cod liver supplement, unless you drink caffeine by the gallons and raw spinach by the tons, you're fine. That's really all I wanted to say. You don't need to worry about it, okay? Focus so much more on what you can do and what to increase in your diet, and way less on what you need to limit. And so much so that the caffeine, it's like, it might reduce calcium intake by 6 milligrams. So guess what? When you pour your cream into it, you're making up for it, right? Ridiculous. So that is sort of a brief overview of nutrition and bone health. Thank you guys for listening. Sorry that took a little longer. Kate, it's all you.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Oh.
All right. Here, sure. That way I'll just hit this button. Okay, so we said, talk to your doctor. You gotta eat right. We got a lot of information there. I love hearing it. I think the first time I bought a bag of Brazil nuts, and it's on my desk, and every time I go into my office, I make sure I have my 1 a day. And then I had a couple of people that after my part of the lecture, they said, oh, I started doing heel drops anytime I'm just standing still. So any little thing, right? So the last part of adding bone density is giving it stress through exercise. And we use this with Wolff's Law. Wolff's Law says if you give it stress, it will adapt. And just like Goldilocks, too much load could lead to fracture. That's not good. But not enough load, you're not doing it any service, and it will actually get less. So there's some exercises that are better than others. When making the exercise prescription, and what I want you to feel like today is Kate gave me some great ideas. I'm gonna go figure it out, and I'm gonna do what I like to do, considering the principles I give you, and just have at it and just get moving. Anything is better than what you're probably doing. And then if you think, no, I cannot go out of this alone, that's where the team comes in and we can help you with that. So the things we need to incorporate with our exercise, they need to be specific, progressive, reversibility, considering our initial T-scores, and at some point there are diminishing returns. What do I mean by specificity? Hit it. When we're exercising, I mean, honestly, we don't do this all day. So that doesn't really help. We want to do exercise that looks like life. How about this one? Oh, just groceries. Why are you scared of a deadlift? Right? Farmer carry. Pull. Press. Burpees. Gotta get that thing for the dog. Oh, I can't get down on the ground. I have osteoporosis. You do it anyway. Oh, let's squat down. Let's do it again and again. That is what I mean by specificity. Sorry that it looks like a YouTube video. Okay, the next is progressive. The weights cannot be the same. If you do the same 10-pound weight forever and over, your bones at first will get stronger because you went from 0 to 10. But if you stay at 10, they will only stay good enough for 10. So at some point you have to go to 15 and 20 and 30. So they need to be progressive. Reversibility, what I'm talking about here is whether it's osteopenia, osteoporosis, it's not that death sentence, it's not over. You can, with the right environment, shift your T-scores. It may not go to normal, but it could improve. And knowing that the curve is always going to go down, whether you have osteoporosis or not, staying the same is a big win, right? Considering your initial values, the weaker the bone, do you think it responds better or worse to exercise? The weaker, the lower the T-score, the worse your score. Do you think those people have a better chance of improving or a worse chance of improving? They have a better chance of improving. There's not much lower you can go, right? So it starts to go up quickly. And then the higher scores, it is harder to get even higher. So the lower values make a difference. And I also care about where on your DEXA scan are the lower values, because maybe I want to protect the body area. Maybe I really want to focus in on the body area. And then that diminishing returns that, you know, at some point it's only going to get so good. Maybe if it gets back to normal, that's great. Looking at the curve, I'm not going to make anyone's scores look like they were 18 again. It's just not going to happen. So as you improve, the rate of improvement slows down. Doesn't mean it can't improve. And again, staying the same is a major win. So what kinds, oh, hang on, I think we're supposed to be moving. There we go. Key types of exercise. So we want to be progressive in our resistance. We need to utilize high velocity power, and we want to be weight bearing. So, progressive resistive training. Here is progressive resistive training. Some are using 5, some are using 10s or 20s. They are loading. They are getting their muscles going, things overhead to put weight through our arm to help with bone density here, and through our skeleton, through our spine, and through our hips. So it's really important that we're up. Next one. Got it. High velocity power training. So we want to move quickly. There's a couple theories why we're adding weight, why we're adding exercise to the bone. One is, just like I said, how if you were slender earlier on, you didn't have a lot of mass to put force on your bone. So we're just adding weight to the skeleton. We're forcing it to respond to this extra weight. But, I'm just going to pause in here. Muscles attach to tendons that attach to the bone. So I have this big muscle here, right? Yeah. It attaches from point A to point B. And when I contract this muscle, it tugs on the bone. So I can tug on the bone, and that will cause the bone to respond and grow. Does that make sense? I can also squish the bone, and I could just carry a backpack, and I could make myself heavier, and that will also compress the bone. And I can also bend and twist the bone. Anytime I move the bone and give it a stress, whether it's this way or that way or this way or tugging, it causes a reaction. So high velocity, it's not necessarily heavy, but the quickness of my muscles will tug on the bone in such a way to cause a really good stress reaction. Does that make sense? That's why we have high velocity. The next one is weight bearing, because you know that gravity thing, it's always pushing down on us. If we're sitting, if we're lying down, that's great. We're getting good muscle contractions, but we're not using gravity to our advantage. Got to tell you, this osteoporosis thing would get way worse if we lived on the moon, because we wouldn't be having enough weight through our bones. So when we're talking about weight-bearing exercise, there's a bit of a hierarchy. So if I'm standing here with my body weight, it is 1 body weight. And as I'm walking, it is a little bit more force, comparable to 1.1 of my, walking, 1.2 of my body weight. Does that make sense how these numbers are working? And if I decide to march in place, I'm getting it up a little bit. It's going to take a while to get down there. If I'm running, boom, now we have a really big jump, 2.6. If we're going up on a 1-foot step, power, getting up really high, we're at 2.7. Jumping takeoff, watch this, I'm not even going to land. Just this, because the force I put into the floor comes back to me and loads my bone. Yes, I don't even have to jump. Don't be afraid. Give the floor some force, right? So that's the jumping takeoff. Heel drop, up on your toes, and you land. I have heels, so I'm not dropping very far, right? So up and down. Just that landing through the big calcaneus, your heel bone, and how it reverberates and comes up through your skeleton can help. So adding a dozen of those a day with your Brazil nut, 2 for the price of 1. jump squat, right, where we're coming up and down. And with some of my patients, with my athletes, I go, come on, land light, land like a ninja. With these patients, I go, land hard, make some noise, right? Because I want that force progressively to help load the bone, because that's how we get the best bone response. Foot stomp, even just this. Look at how much force this is compared to just running, right? And a vertical jump. Oh, man, we're just getting really high here, and a vertical squat jump would be from floor to ceiling, right? Okay. I always get a workout at this part. So let's see these people in action. There we go. Lift to press. We have progressive resistive training. We have high velocity. We have weight bearing, our jumping, plyometric, weight bearing, and quick. I know, look at her go. Look, this whole gym is meant for like an osteoporosis class. By the way, we also have an osteoporosis class called Strength and Beyond. It is through RVNAHealth, but it's conducted at Steel Fitness, which is a gym on 35 in Ridgefield, next to Parmadelli. I don't know if you guys, we're really not that far away. And this is what we do. We set up a circuit of different weight-bearing, intense exercises. But what's cool is, because it's led by a physical therapist that knows better, we can push you to what you need, but keep it safe. Personal trainers are like, ooh, osteoporosis, take it easy. But you just learned, I don't need it easy. I need it hard, but hard enough for me. So with a small group, we can modify and say, well, you're going to do 5, and you're going to do 10 pounds, and you're going to do it this way, but you have a back problem, and we can make it safe and applicable for everybody. Here's another example of weight bearing. Quick, step, step, go, step, step, go. Good for balance too. And agility. Okay, so we have all three types. Let's put it together and study it. There's a study called the Lift More study. It stands for the Lifting Intervention for Training Muscle and Osteoporosis Rehabilitation. This is how bones get stronger. So here's what they did. They took a group of people with osteoporosis. Some of them were on medicine, some were not. And they said, you guys, we're gonna take it easy. We're gonna exercise. In fact, specifically, they had a lower intensity exercise. It's called like sit and get fit class. They were walking, they had lunges, calf raises, arm lifts, stretches. Okay, you know what? That's better than some physical therapists, I gotta tell you. It was not nothing. And then they took this other group of women, 65 years old average, and so between 60 and 70, twice a week for 30 minutes. Not that much. They did it for 8 months. Here's what they did. Deadlifts, where you go down like you have 2 grocery bags and you stand up. They did squats, where the bar is on the back and they squat down. A jumping chin up, so there's a bar, and you jump to it, pull, you don't even have to get all the way up, and you let it go. That's 3. And the last one was a shoulder press. But when they said, okay, here's some weight, can you do that? Is that easy? Oh, is that easy? And they calculated how much could you do. So let's pretend, for easy math, I'm super strong and I can lift 100 pounds. They say, okay, great, Kate, I need you to lift 85 pounds, but only 5 times. So it's heavy, it's not a lot of volume. 5 times, go do my other exercise, go do my chin-ups, go do my squat, come back 5 times. 5 sets of 5 for 4 exercises. Sounds like a lot, right? It only took 30 minutes. And it was only twice a week. These women, their T scores got better. So looking here, notice that the dark gray is our lift more people, and the light gray are the sit and get fit. This first one here is the lumbar spine bone mineral density, and the 0 means stayed the same. Remember I said if you stay the same, that's a win? Look at how high the dark gray went. That is on average their percent change in bone mineral density of the spine. And what happened to the sit and get fit? Someone explain this to me. What happened? It went down in 8 months. But they exercised. Not enough. Not the right one. It's not the right way. Okay? Also, this is at the femoral neck. They got worse. They got a little bit better. Down here are their, I can't see from the Zoom, are their functional scores, their leg strength, their back extensor strength, their time to get a go test, meaning stand up, walk, come back, their sit to stand test. They all the dark grays got better. Okay? So, the other most important thing, so of all the sessions for 8 months, was about 70 sessions that these people completed. All 49 of the people in the heavy duty lifting completed the entire thing, except one person had some muscle spasms and was sore, so they skipped 2 days. No one fractured. No one got hurt. But we're all scared to bend over and pick up a pencil, right? It's safe. It's good. If we do it right and we do it progressively, it's not detrimental, it's actually beneficial. Good. So what can you do out there? Yes, have some caution. Do it smart. Don't go and deadlift 160 pounds if you've never done it, but we got to start somewhere, knowing that anything we do goes into the right direction, finding that Goldilocks level. And if you feel like I'm going to give you some ideas, you don't know where to start or what to do, that's what we're here for. You don't have to sign up for months and months of physical therapy. It's just a time to talk, and I coach you through it. So here are some examples if you want to get out your phone. If you were going to go home and be like, I'm going to start right now and I do not exercise, you would start with some heel drops on a wall. Maybe do some push-ups, explode and clap. Look at how I'm getting away and I'm landing a little firm right here to get some load into my wrist. You don't have to do full jumping jacks. You could do modified jumping jacks, marching, modified push-up, modified planks, crab and bear crawl, or like crawling on the floor on your hands and your feet either forward or back, sitting and standing, sitting on your chair, standing up. It's a squat, but there's a chair under you. And inchworms, where you're bending over, walking out to a plank, and walking up. When we start jumping, this is really where the magic happens. Let's start with, if you're at a gym, you know those TRXs, there's like a strap you can hold on to. You take a little bit of your body weight off as you start doing jumping, full jumping jacks, push-ups where you really land on your hands, burpees, crab walks. These are just kind of hold in place, but you're getting your body, especially your arm. Our arms never touch the ground. So in order to put weight through your arm, you have to touch the ground. So it would start with just holding and work your way to walking. Farmer carry, grab the milk jug, grab two, and just carry it around the house. Working all of this and everything going through our skeleton and spine. Lifting overhead, squatting. Any questions here that you're like, what the heck is this exercise? I can explain it now or later. So usually I have my colleague Andrea here who runs our Strength and Beyond class, and I say it and she demonstrates it, and it's hilarious. Let's meet John. Oh, my buddy John. John's 88. Actually, he just turned 89. He had osteoporosis because he had prostate cancer and was treated. And he felt like, why do I want to take more meds? It was the meds that did this to me. What else can I do? So he worked with Monica on his diet. He worked with me. We got him lifting. You can already see there's a shape to his spine because of the wedging. But heck, we do not want it to get any worse. So we worked from 80 pounds, 100 pounds. We got our way up to 160 pounds. And he's doing great. So he's getting his next DEXA scan, I think in August. So I'll have results to see if my little experiment T-scores got better. So here we go. Sum it up. Everything we did tonight, because this was a lot, right? I hope you walk out of here with some action items. And if you don't, here they are. There's some things you can't change. There's some things you can. You do the best you can, little by little, to make some of the changes with modifiable risk factors. You don't have to go it alone. We're here for you. You have our information to contact us. Food first, of course, approach, but supplements are there for you. And exercise is that missing element to take. You can provide this beautiful environment of calcium and D and all the minerals that Monica's giving you, but you have to stress the bone so it takes it and deposits it, right? And your exercises probably need to be harder than you think. That's about it, everybody. You get your picture? Thank you so much. We'll take some questions, yeah. And Monica, you want to come answer questions
Yeah,
too?
we have some from our virtual audience.
Let's go.
The first one is, if estrogen helps prevent osteoporosis, why are men suffering in lower numbers?
So, okay. Estrogen prevents osteoporosis. Correct. So men keep their level of estrogen. Women had more and then dropped. So it's because of the change in estrogen, not the baseline level. Does that make sense? Okay.
And then what is a bear crawl?
Okay. So you're on all fours, and then you just pick up your knees. This is it. Oh, it's hard. You could go forward, you could go back, you could go sideways. Oh, but that's a good one. And that's getting some weight bearing through the upper body, and we'll use it for core. Oh, it's a quad burn. It's a good one. Yeah. Any other questions?
I have this.
Of course.
For Monica, so I mess with, I think I would eat a lot more raspberries. I think that was like, if they weren't so expensive. The organic ones.
Yeah, I think what I will say in response to like the Dirty Dozen and environmental working group is I have seen many, many, many randomized control trials, observational data, epidemiological data on the role of raspberries in overall health. I can't say that I've seen a single randomized control trial on the role of like pesticides from dietary intake, right? Not exposure, and on the role of health. So I think that like those claims can get amplified. If you want to do organic, awesome. It's not, in my clinical opinion, necessary to do that. You're welcome. Yeah.
What's the relationship between sunlight and vitamin D?
That's such a good, yeah. So you can quite literally get vitamin D from the sun. It's like goes into your skin, and then it has this whole process where it converts to the active form of vitamin D. So that's, yeah, so it means an awesome way to get it. I don't have any.
It's about, so it needs to be, it's because of the ultraviolet light that comes from the sun. So we kind of have a problem when we lather our kids in sunscreen, they actually don't get the vitamin D. So the recommended dose that I've read, and this is not where my forte is, it's about 10 minutes of exposed skin a day to the sun. And it's not, you don't have to go out there nude. It's really just like face and arms. If it's exposed for 10 minutes with no sunscreen, that is enough sunlight to keep us. And then vitamin D also is a major factor in our emotional and mental health and happiness and fights depression. So that's why not only are we sad because it's cold, we're sad because we don't have vitamin D and it's affecting our bones and calcium. So yes, even with the snow, get out there and see some sun.
Posture. Does osteoporosis damage your posture? And is it something, that causes bad posture? Or?
That's a really good question. So osteoporosis just being present, no. But over time, with tiny little compression fractures, the shape of the, I'm going to try and get a good picture of my buddy John here. Here we go. Oh, I had it and then I lost it. It was right when he was going to deadlift. Let's pause. You see the curve there? He can't fix that. It doesn't hurt. It is just the shape of his spine. Just like scoliosis, which is super common. Almost a quarter of us have scoliosis. And yes, I guess there is some studies that say those with scoliosis have a higher predisposition to back pain, but scoliosis is just the name of a curve. It's just like, my C goes this way, well, my C goes this way. It doesn't hurt, it's just the name. Osteoporosis is just the status of the bone, not the shape. But over time, if those blocks that a beautiful tower was straight up and down, if each of those blocks looked a little bit more like triangles, then it starts to shape and it's stuck, and I can't fix that. Does that make sense?
That impacts your posture, then you're hurting.
Yes, exactly. So just because you have osteoporosis doesn't mean that. But yes, the more force you give this, the more, because the bone's softer, it can just kind of shape. So yes, we want to be tall. And in my physical therapy world, posture is not, everybody like do a really big slouch, right? Posture is not head back, shoulders back. What I want you to do is stick your butt out. Make this arch. Everything else follows. Does that make sense? So go ahead, slouch. Everybody do it. Yeah. And now up tall by like sticking your butt out, making this curve. This curve sets up the rest of your spine to balance on. And your standing posture is just naturally better than sitting. So if you are at a desk all day and sitting, try and do a standing desk, which will also help your bone health because you'll be standing all day. So yeah.
Other than the Brazil nut, there wasn't much comment about other nuts as being a good source of protein.
I wouldn't really call them a good source of protein. They're an excellent source of healthy fats, but if you're consuming like the recommended amount, which is about 1/4 cup, you're looking at like 6 grams of protein. So I think of that big picture, it can be like a supplement to like maybe like a whole grain and a bean and a nut will help you meet that 30 grams without like an animal base.
It fits into the anti-inflammatory diet.
Yeah,
very
yeah,
well.
absolutely. Yep. Yeah. No, not really. No, I mean, I think that as we sort of talked about the anti-inflammatory, plant diversity really being your multivitamin, and then if necessary, the calcium supplement to meet that 1,200 milligrams. And if you've done all that well, perhaps a vitamin K2 supplement and or vitamin D if necessary. Oh boy.
Yes. So from a quadruped position, no, I'm sorry. So you get on all fours and you just pick your knees up. That's it. So like you're crawling and then you pick your knees. You're crawling and you just pick your knees up and then you crawl in that position, keeping your knees an inch above the ground. It's so tempting to get your butt and knees higher. You want to stay low but not on the ground. I hope. And then the other one is yoga. Yes. So remember our exercise principles. One was progressive resistive. Yoga doesn't really hit the resistive part. It does hit the weight bearing part. And it's depending on what type of yoga you're doing, it's really not a high velocity. So it is better than nothing. It is a great place to start. I do see there's yoga for osteoporosis out there, but as you can see, this study that really worked, that if someone said, I want to change my T-scores, what should I do? If they really love yoga and they're only going to do yoga, I'll say fine, go do yoga. But what works is the opposite of yoga. It's fast, it's hard, it's heavy, it's tough. Yoga has its place. Does the weight training regimen impact for those? So that study said 8 months saw those changes. Yes. But when you start a weight training program, you start to see strength gains in 2 weeks. 2 weeks is when the nerves and the muscles start to communicate a little better. They're better activating. So your muscles are acting stronger, even though they haven't grown yet. 4 weeks is when you actually take the protein and grow bigger fibers. And then every 2 and 4 weeks, something else changes. And you get a really great change. Your body is different at 12 weeks for sure, but you got to get through the first 2 to start to see it. But bone, what's lovely about bone is when it fractures, it heals with bone. There are very few tissues in our body that actually heal with itself. Nerve is one. Nerve injuries heal with nerve. Liver is one. Liver heals with liver. Everything else is scar tissue. Muscles have scar tissue. Deep skin has scar tissue. Tendon scar tissue. Bone is bone. The downside is it's slow, but it's good. Of course. No, this is fun.
I guess a Tai Chi is like the same as yoga, and then the other one is our eccentrics exercises by Miranda Edmond White beneficial.
Okay. Eccentric exercise. So when I lift something up, it is in the positive direction. My muscle is helping it up. But on the way down in the negative direction, the same muscle's still working. It's not like I need my other muscle to pull it down. Gravity will do that. So I'm actually using the same muscle that I went up with in the down phase, and that is called eccentric. Eccentric overload, it has been proven, and I use it all the time in my therapy, to make muscles stronger faster. Side effect, soreness. You really get sore the next day. So on the 3 principles of exercise training for osteoporosis, one was progressive resistive, one was high velocity, one was weight bearing. Eccentric would definitely help in the second category. It depends on how you do it. So here's eccentric, but on weight bearing, 2 for the price of 1. I like that. But eccentric, by definition, should be slow. to get a better contraction, so it wouldn't target number 2. Yeah.
Do you recommend 30 minutes 2 times a week or every other day?
So the study was that, and the 30 minutes was all the time they needed to get the job done. So as you go and design your exercise program, it could be an hour, it could be 30 minutes. You want to hit big major muscle groups. You want to make sure you're targeting the spots on your body that are more vulnerable according to your initial values. But not in every day, because in theory, this should be so tough that you need a day or 2 off to recover. The muscles and our bones need the stress to stimulate growth, but then if you do it again, and do it again, and do it again, you're not giving it time to heal. You're actually causing little tiny injuries to stimulate healing. It's just safe. Does that make sense? So twice a week, and how cool. Twice a week was all they needed. Yeah, that's it. So that's really good. We'll be around, I guess, if there's any more questions. But yeah.
Thank you.